Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Habitual Linecrosser, and today we're talking about the potential for World War III in Iran. Well, I guess some things change and some things stay the same. All right, fine. But before we get into it, a word from today's video sponsor. General Mad Dog Mattis was once quoted stating that you should always carry a knife in case there's cheesecake or you need to stab somebody in the throat. Now I know, I normally say that Americans just be building shit, but sometimes an old throwback does work just as well in the modern day. It's because of reasons like that that I have partnered with the Utica Cutlery Company. Also, because I'm a history nerd, I looked into the Utica Knife Company. They've been proudly making knives since 1910. They switched and brought on fixed blade knives in 1918. They have produced bayonets and weapons parts in World War II, Korea, Vietnam. They have the Army-Navy coveted E that they were awarded for their wartime effort. This is a third-generation family-owned and operated company right here in the United States of America that has been making slicey, pointy, stabby things since before your grandparents were born. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you use the code Habitual20 or click the link in the description of this video, you will get 20% off your order of one of these customized HLC Utica Cutlery Company knives. First off, we got this little guy here made with D2 steel. Your pretty standard fishing knife, stonewash blade, G10 handle with this beautiful blood red liner on here. And of course, we have our HLC logo right there. But I got you guys, that one's not quite bougie enough for you yet. So up next, we got this other one that's a little bit more of a chopper style right here. It's made out of the same D2 steel. It's also got the same stonewash blade with the red accents, just a little bit different of a profile here. And of course, you got the HLC logo right there. One of the things I also really like about these style of pocket knives is you have this ambidextrous where you can adjust the clip to either side of the knife handle, depending on where you want to keep it on your belt, which is a really, really handy thing for those of us who are like me, who are southpaws. But I get it. Those are a little too standard issue for you. You're one of those people who likes to spend their time in the outdoors. Well, is that right, Rambo? This fixed blade right here is made with 1095 high carbon steel with the same blood red liners and things like that you'll happen to notice, but you may notice a little bit different here. This is a black powder coat blade finish. And of course, we still have our beautiful HLC logo right there, but is there anything else that comes with this? Well, bam! You have this beautiful Kydex sheath that it comes with. And of course, you have a fire starter right here and a built-in sharpener at the bottom. So you can check out all these at the link in the description below, but don't forget to use the code Habitual20 to get 20% off of the retail of these knives. And if none of those are quite your style, you can use the code UCC15OFF to get 15% off any of the other knives that they carry currently in their inventory. So go ahead and check them out, ladies and gentlemen. You never know when there's going to be cheesecake, or you need to stab somebody in the throat. Back to the show. I had many people reach out to me and want to know, like, what was the whole situation in Iran? How did we get involved? Why are we involved? Are we closer to World War III now than we ever were? What was destroyed? What has been hit? There's a lot of questions. So I was like, I want to go through and set the record straight and figure out exactly what the hell is going on. Now, anyone who has any experience with the history of that part of the world may say that it is shrouded in nuance. I, on the other hand, tend to believe that it is just covered in fucking bullshit. There's no way we're going to be able to solve that shit in my lifetime, or yours, or anybody else's. It's just, we should just mulligan all of it and start over. Moving on, talking about Iran themselves. Iran is actually one of the oldest continuously populated large areas in the world, dating back to 4000 BC. So I wanted to focus mainly on like the US and Israel and how we really started becoming a piece of this. So I skipped over a lot of their history, which I may do in another video, I'm not really sure. But one thing of note that I did want to bring up is that in the 1200s, around the time of the Mongolian Empire, Genghis Khan had sent 2 diplomatic missions into what is now currently Iran and said, hey, you know, I want to talk about things with you. And they were both slaughtered. So Genghis Khan promptly invaded.
Come on, Boogie, let's burn this motherfucker down!
Slaughtered entire civilizations, razed entire cities. I mean, everybody everywhere was wiped out. So let's just go ahead and say that Iran does have a bit of a history of picking fights that they themselves cannot fucking win. Now, in between there and more modern Iran, it has been conquered and reconquered, very similar to the video that I did about Israel and Hamas, for quite a long time. But I think most of our issues that we have nowadays stem from right around World War II. So in World War II, Iran was officially neutral. However, there was Germans in Iran that were operating out of that country. The Allies, including the Soviets at that point in time, said, you need to get the Germans out. And Iran's like, no, we're neutral. So then the Allies invaded the United Kingdom and Russia and a couple other small countries. Believe it or not, the US was not involved in this, and their thought process behind it is we need to secure those oil refineries for the Allies and not the Axis, so that way cutting off German access to oil, which is incredibly important. But you know what's crazy in that entire thing? Americans that were not part of that in 1943 had Iran sign the Tehran Declaration, which basically said that when the war ends, all the allies are going to leave. This is the land that you're promised. This belongs to the nation of Iran. Here are your borders, and you will be given independence. The United States did that for Iran. Just throwing this back here, right? The United States did that when the United States wasn't even the ones involved in invading Iran at that point in time. Well, spoiler alert, our old friends, the Russians, just like fucking since forever, did not abide by that treaty. The United Kingdom left exactly when they were supposed to do. The Russians, on the other hand, controlled parts of northern Iran for about a year until Iran was like, look, we'll give you some oil if you guys just leave. And they're like, we will leave. We will take the oil and we will leave. And they left. And then Iran very quickly overthrew all the loyalists and said, fuck you, you're not getting your oil, which is a boss move for Iran. I got to be totally real with you there. Quick disclaimer, as I go through this video, I'm going to use a term and then I'm going to explain what it is. I hope I got all the terms in here. So when I use the term Shah, that's pretty much a king. It's S-H-A-H. More or less, it's a king. It's an autocracy. They do have a prime minister, kind of similar to the United Kingdom, how they do today. So fast forward to 1953, the US aided in a coup that put Zahedi as the new prime minister. It was under the same Shah, but ultimately the prime minister was the one who really had all the power at that point in time. Now, they eventually signed what is known as the Baghdad Pact, and is formally known as CENTO, or the Central Treaty Organization, which is the entire purpose of CENTO is very similar to NATO, which was to stop Russian expansion and to protect individual countries. A lot of the documentation in CENTO draw very, similar parallels to NATO in the fact that, an attack on one is an attack on all. However, individual countries are not guaranteed backup from their allies if they choose to go into war themselves, things like that. Well, pretty quickly, Iraq left that, and then it started to just kind of fall apart when Pakistan wanted to attack India, and the US was like, well, we're not going to help you out because it's not in the documentation. They didn't start the shit. However, also during this time, from the 1950s till the Islamic Revolution in 1979, Iran was experiencing something that they called the White Revolution. Now, in this White Revolution, they became incredibly westernized. They were very chummy with the United States. This is also during the time when they got their F-4s, and they got their F-5s, and they got their F-14s, and so on and so forth. But in this time, a string of new policies made a lot of the Muslims feel alienated in Iran. And I was like, well, I really want to know what these policies are and why they felt so alienated, because I try and get both sides. So I looked into some of the policies. It allowed non-Muslims to run for office. Okay. Gave women the right to vote. All right. Allowed men and women to have conversations together in public, which is outlawed under certain sects of Islam. It authorized Western clothing. Some articles saying that it mandated it, others saying it authorized it, so I kind of went with the latter on that one. And then it gave power to the government and took it away from the Shia clergy, which I could totally understand you being upset about that. I mean, religion loves to be in control of things. It doesn't matter which religion it is, they just love control. The man who would later become Ayatollah Khomeini, which is not the current one they have Khomeini now. Khomeini was from 1979 to 1989 when he passed away, and Khomeini is from 1989 until current. He emerged as a prominent critic of the White Revolution, saying that its policies were abhorrent and un-Islamic. His exact words. That's a direct quote there. And after the Islamic Revolution, which we'll get to here shortly, Khomeini became the ruling Islamic jurist, which I actually had to look up what that meant. And it's basically, again, a king with extra steps because he is the sole authority for political and religious power. So like he is the end all be all of everything that has to do with anything in that country, whether it be religion or policy and politics. He is the one. But what I noticed, I wanted to kind of do a stark contrast, and to kind of put it in perspective, Iran shot themselves in the foot because their religious leader was an idiot who wanted power over a failing nation rather than to live in a successful one.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Here's how the comparison is going to break down. Towards the end of the White Revolution, before the Islamic Revolution, Iran's economy was growing at over 10% every year consistently. It varied over that 10%, but like a minimum of 10% every year. And this is a crazy thing to a lot of Americans. All of their debt was paid off by the mid-1970s. They became a creditor nation instead of a debted nation. They were able to credit to other nations and other things. They were doing incredibly well. So in the 40 years since the Islamic Revolution, they've grown it marginally around or less than 0.5% every single year. Some argued that Zahedi was a puppet for the West and we just got everything we wanted for him, but he was incredibly critical of the West and he was very nationalistic. And at one point in time, the Carter administration actually wanted to remove him from power because he wasn't willing to work with the West. So that entire idea just falls on itself. All right, so first we're going to move into the hostage crisis, which is a lot worse and more layers than I ever thought possible. I thought it was just a quick, like, this is why they did it and this is how it's solved. I was way wrong on that. So when the Islamists seized power, the former Shah of Iran, he was granted asylum in the United States. But he was also there to undergo cancer treatments. He ended up dying a year later, even before the hostages were released. So that entire idea is really stupid. That is when the Ayatollah Khomeini started referring to the US as the Great Satan. At least the fuckers know we're great. Anyways, so the hostage crisis actually is a bit of a drawn out thing and there were several steps. So there was actually 2 embassy assaults. The first one, they took a Marine hostage, they tortured him. He was actually set to be executed for murder, but President Carter actually secured his release. That was in February of 1979. The next siege was planned for actually September. They had watched the Marines, the guards, they had mapped their schedules, and they actually didn't even inform the Ayatollah Khomeini that they were going to do this because they thought that he would try and stop them, and they wanted to show him that if they were there and they were spouting in support of him, he would have no choice but to support their cause, which actually turned out to be true, and we'll get into that when they actually siege it. But they decided to wait in September. Come November, they originally had staged a peaceful protest, but when they got a little bit close to the guards brandished firearms and they retreated saying that we are peaceful, we are peaceful. Once they learned that the guards weren't going to use lethal force, busloads of people started showing up around the time that the protesters had broken through the gate. Once they had seized the area, anyone who wasn't there at that point in time, they rounded them up and then brought them back there and maintained them as hostages as well, with the exception of 6 people who were actually taken refuge by Canadian diplomats. So fucking shout out to Canada for not backing up terrorism. Their whole idea behind it is they wanted the Shah to come back and face trial and then be executed. Well, fucking joke's on them. They were there for 444 days, and during that time, he had actually died in Egypt of cancer. This whole hostage situation forced the US to cut diplomatic ties with Iran, and they ended up backing the Iraqi invasion of Iran to push back the Ayatollah Khomeini's kind of ideology that was bleeding into Saddam's country. And wouldn't you know it, Saddam actually used chemical weapons on the Iranians. So about those WMDs. Look, I'm going to just go off on a tangent here. Anyone who's like, there was no WMDs in Iraq. Look, if your definition of WMD is nuclear weapon, we knew that those were not there. We knew that for a fucking fact. But my definition is any weapon that can create mass destruction, chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear. There were Marines in Fallujah that were treated for exposure to mustard gas in the 2003 invasion, which kind of makes the whole, like, no WMDs falls flat on its face. Anyways, we're going to continue on. So the Beirut bombing. This is the next big step in the relations between the United States and Iran. Now you're like, Beirut is Lebanon. Don't worry, we will get there. So in 1983, the Beirut bombing, a couple of suicide bombers with 12,000 pounds of homemade explosive killed 241 US service members and 58 French military at a barracks. Now, why were they there? They were a peacekeeping force. Israel had moved into Lebanon to try and keep Syria from pushing through Lebanon and attacking Israel, and they were trying to establish a 40-kilometer keep-out zone. Around the time of the Beirut bombing, Israel had been like, hey, Syria, are you good with us just like parting ways and you stay on your side, I'll stay on my side? And Syria naturally said no, and Israel was like, cool, we're leaving anyways. And as Israel started to back off, attacks on US and peacekeeping personnel started to increase, which eventually led to the 1983 Beirut bombing. Now, you know what's crazy? I found out that no one has ever been charged with any kind of crime in correlation with the Beirut bombing. No charges have ever been filed. The people who took responsibility called themselves Islamist Jihad. This was 1983. It's important to note that Hezbollah didn't exist until 1985. Many people believe that this was like pre-Hezbollah, but it was Hezbollah. They just kind of used a fake name to keep themselves from being discovered. I don't know. Terrorists are weird. Now you're like, HLC, how does this tie back to Iran? We're getting to it. So in 2004, we're fast forwarding a little bit, 2004, the Ayatollah had backed these individuals called the Iranian Suicide Brigades, and there was a specific brigade that ended up building a monument to the suicide bombers of the Beirut bombing. I'm sorry, but we don't build monuments to shit that we didn't have a part in, but neither here nor there. It's also important to note, because I'm trying to tie all this together because there's so much going on over there in the Middle East, that specific unit of the Iranian Suicide Brigades is named after Yahya Ayash, which is a Hamas bomb maker, who is also known as the Engineer.
I'm an engineer. That means I solve problems.
So, Hezbollah, Iran, Hamas, we already got those ties there. Let's see how many more we can tie in. I will say the U.S. did have an oopsie. In 1988, we had a naval ship accidentally shoot down an Iranian civilian airliner. Now, the U.S. never formally apologized, but they paid them like $61 million. Which, do you have any idea what $61 million will do for you in Iran? Around the same time, Operation Praying Mantis happened, where Iran learned how U.S. diplomacy works. Fool me once, we're going to be polite to you and tell you not to do it again. Fool me twice, we're going to sink half of your Navy in 8 hours. Please go ahead and check out my buddy Nick, the Fat Electrician, his video on Operation Praying Mantis. It's beautiful. That's why I don't want to get too far into that here. But Praying Mantis is an important part of this story because it is a turning point for Iran. I think that Praying Mantis was the point that Iran realized you cannot go toe-to-toe with the US and their allies. You need to pump money into terror organizations who don't believe in borders, who can move wherever they need to move, and can hide amongst the population. And, you know, tribute to them, it's really fucking effective. So basically, Iran has been pumping money, weapons, travel documents, other logistical support into terror groups in Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen. Pick a country in the Middle East that has a terror group, Iran probably gives them something. They even have a Unit 190, and the Unit 190 is specifically designed to transport, they're a logistics unit that transports weapons and equipment to terror groups in the Middle East. They're under the Quds forces, and the Quds forces are Iran's version of like a CIA and special operations put together. They specialize in unconventional warfare. The only one they're kind of on rocky terms with is Al-Qaeda. Now, Al-Qaeda has gotten help from Iran. They've been able to transition through Iran without any issues. They've also gotten travel documents from Iran, but Iran's not really like cool with Al-Qaeda. They have a bit of a rocky past, so that's the only one that's like, yeah, and that's probably why Al-Qaeda is fizzling out rather quickly, because they have no friends left.
I have literally nothing going on. I have no friends. Does anybody want to hang out?
But it's also important to note that during the war in Iraq, Al-Qaeda forces would regularly go to Iran, and they would recruit, they would train, they would build, and then they would come back and attack American forces, just like the Taliban did in Pakistan. All the dumb ones got killed real quickly. It was all the smart ones that ran away to another country because the US has to follow borders. They don't. I know, it's a shitty policy. I don't like it any more than you do, but it's also important to note that this, ladies and gentlemen, is why Hamas is pushing the genocide narrative. Don't get me wrong, Israel is not without their faults. They have done a lot of shit.
Here you go, Mr. President.
God bless Israel.
In Gaza, right? I'm not going to denounce that, like, you know, just breeze right over that. They've done a lot of shit. But Hamas right now is in a very interesting position, which is why I'm paying attention to it. Every other terror organization that has ever existed in the Middle East had another country to run to that the US or our allies couldn't chase them into. Hamas doesn't. Hamas is cornered. Egypt is literally letting 0 people in. You can't get through Israel because they got a blockade, and the ocean is covered by the United States, which is why you're starting to see such an uptick in the propaganda about genocide. If you look at some of the doctrine correlated with the like Gaza Ministry of Health, which is Hamas controlled, by the way, they will never count fighters as actual like KIA. They will always count them as civilians. It was actually put out by them. And in the United States, if you can create some kind of sadness or outrage amongst the public. Politicians respond because they care about getting elected. So they figured out the cheat code. All you have to do is make people feel bad about what is happening to you, whether or not you fucking deserve it. And America is going to respond in kind because our politicians want to get elected. It's fucking messy, isn't it? Oh God, it still gets worse. It's important to note that in our various sanctions and unsanctions that we've had with Iran since like our history of dealing with them, President Obama signed a nuclear deal with Iran in 2008, limiting the amount of enriched uranium that they could possibly have. Now, President Trump in 2018 left that deal, which circumstantially had it dissolve, and Iran can make as much as they want to. I wanted to know why. So I was like, okay, I went in, and according to the Trump administration, what they're saying is that the deal itself did not limit Iran enough that they could not still create a nuclear weapon. Also, it didn't limit the amount of ballistic weapons and then weapons they were able to transfer to their terror allies that are in the region. So he thought the deal, or the administration in general, thought the deal wasn't good enough, so they backed out of it, and now they're trying to negotiate a new one. Jury's still out on how that's going to work out. And that more or less, I mean, there's a whole bunch of other whataboutisms. Look, if you want to play whatabout with somebody in the Middle East, there is always something else that happened that you can do a whataboutism. I'm just trying to give you guys a low down dirty about what the hell is going on, okay? That leads us to today. So before I get into what has been destroyed, why? And why now? Because why would Israel start attacking Iran just out of the blue like this? Well, so here's the thing. Iran has figured out the cheat code. They pumped a ton of money into Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. Those are the three primary ones that they'd like to back in the area. Hezbollah is licking their wounds because Syria has fallen, and Hezbollah was out of Lebanon, and normally when you're getting your shit rocked in Lebanon, you would run to Syria. And Syria is starting to side a little bit more with the United States since the fall of the previous regime that was there. Hamas is completely fucking cornered. They're licking their wounds. They have almost nowhere to hide. They are absolutely cornered and fucking terrified by Israel. And then you come to the Houthis. And the US just spent several weeks pushing their shit in on a colossal scale. Look, I don't care who you are, man. Like, they're not doing well. Like, just strictly by the numbers, they are getting their shit fucking rocked. So then, who does Iran have left? Because Iran provides weapons, equipment, money to all of those different organizations who are now screaming for more of it. Why not go to the source? Well, the reason we previously haven't gone to the source is because they're friends with Russia. What's Russia doing right now? Oh, shit. Russia's having trouble with Ukraine. Look, I don't care. You can shake this any way you want to. I'm not trying to say, like, Ukrainians are better than Russians. Look, I'm not getting caught up in the whole political bullshit of it right now. It doesn't matter what nation on earth you are. The amount of losses that Russia and Ukraine have both suffered right now during this war would cripple anybody, including the United States. Although we definitely wouldn't lose that many, but still, right? So now Iran is circumstantially cornered. They don't really have any friends. And China's more on the economic war stage right now, not so much on the military war stage. They're building up for that military aspect, and, you know, neither here nor there. So now we have an opportunity to reduce Iran's capability to provide Shahed drones to Russia, to provide oil, gas, and everything else over to China, and they have no friends that are going to come and save them. That is the timing. That is where we're at right now. That, at least in my belief, is the reason that Israel and the United States have moved in and started putting the fucking pain on Iran. So, what has been hit? Guys, I don't want to tell you how long it took me to write all these notes. So, first we're going to go over Operation Rising Lion. And I'm not even going to say who I think caused more damage to the other. I'm going to let you guys decide. Okay, I'm just going to go over, and these are from sources that are both Israeli and Iranian, and some third-party sources. So I kind of just put some stuff together just to see, this is what I'm thinking is actually happening. And there's a whole lot of it's all shrouded in false information, misinformation, or some of it's correct. I don't know. It's really hard to follow. But Operation Rising Lion. At the Natanz nuclear facility, the pilot fuel enrichment plant was hit 3 times and destroyed. The electrical substation and backup generators have been destroyed, and several air defense systems have been destroyed. At the Esfahan Nuclear Tech Center, they've lost metallic uranium production facility. It's been damaged or destroyed. Hard to say there. The uranium conversion facility has been damaged. The fuel plate fabrication plant has been damaged. And a 4th critical building has been destroyed. I couldn't really figure out what the hell that was there. At the Iraq nuclear complex, the IR-40 reactor containment building has been destroyed. Distillation towers for heavy water production have been destroyed. At the Fordo fuel enrichment plant, Iran says Israel struck the site. However, Israel denies this. As of now, there's no visible damage, but that was on the 12th of June. And on the 16th of June, Israel said that they went in and attacked, but so far there's no visible damage, although earthquake sensors that were nearby were triggered. So something was hit. At the Parchin military complex, it's been hit multiple times in facilities used to make ballistic missiles. The Tehran Nuclear Research Center, multiple strikes damaged the building used to make and test centrifuge rotors. A Shahid Masami group, it's been struck. Several buildings that are used for chemical weapons production and research have been destroyed. Now, when it comes to assassinations, we're scratching the surface. So far, Israel has eliminated the Iranian Chief of Staff for Armed Forces, the Commander-in-Chief of the IRGC, the Commander of the Iranian Military, Commander-in-Chief of the IRGC Aerospace Forces, Commander of the IRGC Air Defenses, Commander of the IRGC Intelligence, 7 high-level Iranian nuclear scientists, the Senior Iranian Commander to Quds. He is the one who helped orchestrate the attack on October 7th, and a senior Iranian commander of the Quds force associated with Unit 190, which is the unit, like I stated before, that transfers weapons and equipment over to their terror homies. Now, these are the government locations outside of nuclear facilities that have been hit. Iranian Ministry of Defense has been damaged. The Organization of Defense and Innovation and Research has been damaged. The Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs Library has been damaged. The Iranian Ministry of Justice has been damaged. The Iranian Ministry of Intelligence has been damaged. Iranian Law Enforcement Command, damaged. Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting, significant damage, has been hit 4 times. Evin Prison, the main gate, has been damaged along with some administrative buildings. Palestine Square countdown clock has been destroyed. Yeah, IRGC headquarters have been damaged. The IRGC Quds Forces headquarters has been damaged. The IRGC Basij HQ has been damaged. It's the Basij, I don't know how to say that. It's the Iranian militia. That basically, the Ayatollah Khamenei often refers to them as the force of 20 million or something like that. So it's their militia headquarters. The IRGC headquarters in Khomeini has been damaged. The Iranian Air Force 2nd Tactical Air Base, several buildings have been destroyed where they house 3 squadrons of MiG-29s and F-5s and a runway that they cratered to avoid those jets being able to take off even when they are repaired. The Hamadan Air Base hangar holding F-4s has been severely damaged and they destroyed the radar. Iranian Air Force 1st Tactical Air Base has been severely damaged. Most of the hangars holding planes. This is also where we saw the videos of the F-14s on the tarmac getting smoked. That was the most bittersweet thing I think I've ever experienced in my life. Like, yay! You know, they're destroying Iranian military capability, but fuck, couldn't we have stolen them instead?
You've got to be shitting me. An F-14?
Ugh. Asadabad Airport medium-range ballistic missiles launchers have been destroyed. Iranian Air Force 14th Tactical Air Base aerial refueling aircraft has been destroyed. Khatami Air Base damaged. That had hangars with F-14s, Chengdu F-7s, and the PC-7 training aircraft. Amman Missile Base, several buildings significantly damaged that are holding mid-range ballistic missiles. Tehran Ballistic Missile Air Defense Base, Mossad damaged that with drones. IRGC Tabriz missile launch sites. They have 2 sites that are destroyed now. Kermanshah underground missile facility, 10 strikes, closing the tunnel entrances and silo openings and destroying storage buildings. That's where they would store and launch ballistic missiles from. Bid Ganeh, 2 ballistic missile storage facilities destroyed. Khomeini missile base drive-through facility. It's to transfer missile launchers and missiles to different areas. That's been destroyed. At least the entrances have been destroyed. Karamabad Missile Base, several buildings for storage of missiles and the launch sites have been destroyed. Gamsar Missile Fuel Production Facility has been damaged. Tirani Mogadam Missile Base extensively damaged. Fuck man, I am so tired of this goddamn word salad. Just name it like Mike's Missiles or some shit. Najafabad Missile Base has been damaged. Kojir Missile Production Complex has been hit to cause a large explosion and fires. Shahid Sultani Garrison Missile Storage and Production Sites have been damaged. 16 military installations that were not previously listed have all been hit, varying locations, barracks, kind of just reducing their ability to attack. Gadir Radar has been damaged. The Shobashi Radar has been destroyed. Shiraz Electronics Industries have been damaged. The Efsan Ammunition Factory has been destroyed. Iran Helicopter Support and Renewal Company has been heavily damaged. Iran Aircraft Manufacturing Industries Corporation has been damaged, 3 oil refineries, 1 oil depot, 1 natural gas production facility, and then they had 4 accidental civilian strikes, including Farabi Hospital, which Israel actually apologized for. They're like, that wasn't our target. We fucked that up. So that's what Israel has hit. That's not even counting the strikes that the U.S. did. So now let's move on to Iran, the Operation True Promise 3. So far, Iran has hit the Kiria. I don't know how to say that right. It's an IDF headquarters. It wasn't hit directly. A missile struck nearby. The Israeli Military Intelligence School has been struck 4 times. The Ministry of the Interior has had minor damage, blew out windows, a missile struck nearby. U.S. Embassy has suffered shockwave damage because of a nearby missile impact. The U.S. Consulate in Iraq, they tried. 2 drones were shot down. So no damage there. It's in the list of attacks. They tried. Soroka Medical Center damaged by a ballistic missile. Weizmann, I don't know how to say it. Institute of Science has been damaged by a ballistic missile. Gavyam Nagev Advanced Tech Park has been struck and damaged. They've damaged 1 oil refinery. So far, I didn't see any of this destroyed. It just says damaged. 1 oil refinery, the Haifa power plant, a wastewater treatment facility, and they've had about 15 strikes that have landed in civilian areas and around residential buildings. That's it. Look, I'm not going to say who I think won, but like, if you guys saw my notes and saw the comparison of what each country has hit, I mean, it becomes clear to me, but I don't want to tell you how to live your life. Now, during this time, it's important to note that the United States struck 3 nuclear sites with MOPS, or Massive Ordnance Penetrator, similar to the penetrator Russia's mom likes. I'm sorry. Sometimes Grandpa Buff he's there. And then Iran attacked a U.S. base in Qatar, and 13 out of the 14 missiles are shot down, one of which they didn't even shoot it down on purpose. It wasn't going to hit anything important. But judging by 15 strikes versus 4 strikes on civilian locations, I'd say one of these countries is slightly more accurate, which of course mentally sent me down a rabbit hole of like, well, why are they just going so sledgehammer in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip? But then I thought like, well, it's because Hamas hides in those. So they take out that building, then Hamas runs to another one and they take out that building. It's a fucking mess. Now you got to understand, when talking about intercepts, now everyone wanted me to get into a little bit of missiletism here. When you're talking about an intercept, a missile is coming down. I don't have my whiteboard set up yet. I haven't found a place for it. I will get there eventually. But as a missile is coming down, you're predicting its impact point. It's called a GIP, a ground impact point. The system, based off of the way the missile is traveling, kind of tries to estimate where it's going to land at. And that can move as the missile comes down, or it does flippy doo doo does, or whatever shit that it does to try and avoid missile intercepts. Now, when you hit that target, people think you're just hitting the missile. Like, we just need to hit the missile. No. Most air defense systems on the planet, that is their goal, is just hitting the missile. The US takes it a step further. Now, this one I got a tiptoe on. We're not looking to hit the missile. We want to destroy the payload. We target the payload in that incoming intercept. Now, the enemy has gotten smart, and sometimes they move the payload behind where the warhead would be, or they move it in different places, or they have decoys. They do a bunch of different creative shit, and we have ways to combat a lot of that. Not every single thing, but we're better set up than everybody else. Now, when you hit it, even if you destroy the payload, you still have several thousand pounds of debris that is falling to the ground. And that is an unfortunate reality of our job. My job in and of itself, well, my former job, was to protect often air bases. I can't think of a single time I was protecting like foreign military assets. I was just protecting US assets. Not saying we don't, I never did. So we protect our assets, we protect our runways, things like that. So if I can stop that missile short, hopefully it's gonna fall in just open land where no one's gonna get hurt. But occasionally that is not the case. Did I protect my asset? Yes. But is Pawtucket, who tractor and cow that it fell on, gonna be pissed off? Yes, absolutely.
This is a cow farm. You're gonna find cows outside.
Now, while the US is kind of downplaying the entire attack on Qatar because Iran telegraphed it, they're like, hey, we're gonna attack right here, and the US shot it down. That was so that they could save face in front of their military powers and that we had an opportunity to de-escalate it. That was just political fucking showmanship right there. Realistically, it didn't need to happen. The difference is the Qataris are viewing it very differently, and everybody over there is kind of cool but not cool with Iran, And it sucks. We're like, why are we attacking Iran? Well, Iran is the center of instability in the region. Saudi Arabia and Iran are both vying for, being in charge of the Middle East. Enough that Iran pumped a bunch of money into the Houthis, and then Saudi Arabia attacked the living shit out of the Houthis. It was super bloody, and the UAE helped them. It was just a rough time. Now the UAE, United Arab Emirates, their chief trade partner is Iran, which is surprising considering they are incredibly westernized. Now, a lot of those countries in the Middle East, they rely on the United States for protection. And of course, we have our own deals in that. That's more like down the road. Like, yes, we protect them, but it's not usually for free. Sometimes it is, but not regularly. It also gives us a place to store our troops and stuff like that. And any kind of attack on U.S. forces in a foreign location draws attention to the fact that U.S. forces are in a foreign location, which those countries, oftentimes they're like the Crown Prince and stuff, don't like the world seeing that because it makes them feel like they can't protect their own assets. And they don't really like the U.S. being there in general. Look, you got stupid people in every country that are like, send them home. And then the U.S. leaves and they get fucking bombed. They're like, where was America?
Cecil! I need you, Cecil!
It's the dumbest shit. So anyways, all of these countries, the Gulf states, they want Iran dealt with, but diplomatically. Historically speaking, that doesn't really fucking work, okay? It just doesn't, right? They'll be like, yes, we will do this. And then they just start pumping money into terror organizations who do all their dirt for them. It's a shitty way to live life, but I digress. In fact, a political scientist in the United Arab Emirates actually stated, we've been living next to Iran for years and for centuries. We know how difficult Iran is. So basically, to sum up this entire video, why did Israel and the United States go into Iran? Timing. Timing is probably, and again, no official sources said that, but it logically makes sense to me from a tactical perspective. Now, with the amount of infrastructure and weapons that has been crippled in Iran, now Iran has stated that their primary goal now is to get their nuclear program back up and running, and they're downplaying the amount of damage that it has suffered, and just judging off of what I just read through, that's a lot of shit that is fucked up. Like but they have damn near bottomless oil money. It's like the third largest reserve on the planet. But this also makes a lot of the Gulf states pretty upset because many of those countries have realized how deep of pockets that a lot of tourists have. The United Arab Emirates themselves have spent billions on infrastructure to try and bring in tourism because they want to show the world that that part of the world is safe and you can go there and be a tourist. When you're sending missiles at Mach fuck over top of their head, they don't really believe that anymore. So that's a down dirty kind of understanding of what is going on in the world right now and why it is important that these things happen at this time and where it could potentially go. Do I foresee it expanding? No, I don't. I genuinely do not see this conflict expanding and becoming a global conflict or World War III like a lot of people are saying, because all of Iran's allies are currently gainfully employed or previously been fucking rocked. So I guess that'll be it right there, ladies and gentlemen. So as always, I'm not going to say give in to the 22 a day because we have a new way of combating that. If you haven't heard, don't do the enemy any fucking favors. And to all my air defenders out there, could not be more proud of you guys. You guys seriously are just crushing it. No matter what happens in this world, no matter where you're sent to fight, you need to fight like you're trying to get your own Sabaton song. With that being said, I'm going to go try and convince the wife to do that thing that I like. It's get frozen custard. Okay, get your head out of the gutter. Fucking weirdos. Play me out.